Hey guys, we're going to learn how to paint these beautiful florals on this cute little pumpkin for our fall holidays. So let's get started. Okay, so first of all, I have a pumpkin sketched out and I cut it out on cardstock, and we're just going to trace it onto our watercolor paper. These are the florals we're going to learn to make. They're very trendy florals and they're very, very easy to make. So we'll take our stencil and we're going to center it from left and right on our watercolor page. And we don't want it exactly center from the top to the bottom. We want it a little bit closer to the bottom because when we add our flowers, it's going to fill up that space in the middle. So it will make it look a little bit centered later. So when you trace your stencil, you want to make sure that you have light pencil marks so that they don't show through your painting. Which I kind of made mine a little dark just for the video, so definitely make your marks a little bit lighter than I did here. And then we're just going to line up the stem of the pumpkin, and you do want your stem of the pumpkin to be pretty long because adding your florals, it's going to hide it. And you want to see a little bit of that stem just poking out at the top. So here we're adding our lines. We want to kind of have them rounded out. So don't be afraid to really curve them out to the side. We want that center section to be rounded on both edges. So it's a little bit more like an oval. There we go. The colors I used are lemon yellow. This one is orange yellow. And the darker orange is vermilion. Okay, so for our pumpkin, we are going to use the gouache like a regular watercolor. So I'm adding quite a bit of water to the paint here and just mixing it up in my tray. And I am going to mix a little bit of my orange with my yellow here just because I want a softer orange. So we have 5 sections. We're going to start on the far left side. And we're going to paint the whole section in with this orange color. I'm adding a little bit of water here so I can smooth out the pigment on the section here. And what that will do is it will make it a little bit lighter in shade, so you get a nice depth of color here. So now I'm going to add a little bit of the vermilion as kind of like a shadow or like the shading of a pumpkin. So if you have your light up here in this corner, it's going to shine down, and the darkest spot is going to be on the bottom of that pumpkin. So we're going to fill it in where that crease is of the section and onto the bottom left side and kind of like have it swoop down into the bottom of the pumpkin. So you can add water here to blend it. And you want to work a little fast here just because you want your lighter orange to still be wet. Especially right now you have a fine line between the dark orange and the light orange, and what you want to do is just blend it as much as you can. And we're going to sweep it up and push it down. And it doesn't have to be perfect at this stage. You can always go back and layer your colors after it's dried. Some people find it easier to wait for it to dry and then add your colors on top later. So we don't want to do the next section right now. We want to skip it and do the middle. And the reason for that is because when you add wet watercolor onto another field that is wet, the colors are going to bleed. And we don't necessarily want that right now. This pumpkin has, the grooves in the side, and we want to keep that line fairly distinct. So we're just going to skip that section and do the middle. Paint the whole thing in, and then we're going to go back and add our shading with the darker orange color. So again, our light will be over here. It's going to shine down, so this will be the highlight of the pumpkin, and this will be the shadow down here. So add some water to blend that line, get those colors nice and smooth. Add a little bit of orange up here in this crease. That's going to help you define your sections of the pumpkin. And I'm so sorry, my phone I guess was dying and it stopped recording. I went ahead and painted that last section before I realized my phone died. So we are switching over and we're going to do the middle two sections. So I'm going to change my shading here just a little bit. So I'm going to work a little bit more with a lighter yellow and the orange mixed together, and that way it kind of gives your pumpkin a little bit more of a realistic look. It doesn't have to be the same orange with every single section of the pumpkin. Sometimes it's nice to have a little bit of white space in between the two sections. I like that just because it kind of emphasizes the highlight of a new section kind of bumping out from the middle of the pumpkin. Go ahead and add your shadows just like we did with all the other sections here. Don't forget to leave a little bit of yellow or the lighter orange in the side. And that way you can tell a difference between the two sections here. And watch your hand when you're painting the last two sections, especially if your pumpkin isn't dry right now. And the reason for that is because I smudged my last section, and that is okay, but it's not very fun when that happens. It's kind of one of those moments. Okay, add your shadowing and blend it up. Here we go, and we're gonna get this crease right here in the middle and one on the right side as well. So now we're going to paint the stem, and I'm using burnt sienna here, which is kind of like a really pretty reddish brown. You can also use burnt umber as a shadow for the stem, but I'm not going to go that far with this yet. Burnt umber is more of a darker brown and it's so pretty. So we're going to add a little bit of water here and mix it in with our color. There we go. Try not to paint your stem if your sections of the pumpkin are still wet. Like I said earlier, if you have two sections that are wet and you're painting against that section, then it's going to bleed your color. So sometimes it looks cool, but that's not what we're going for right now. So go ahead and let your pumpkin dry before you paint your stem. I'm mixing a little bit of orange with my brown just to get a different shade. And when you add two complementary colors together, you're going to get more of a brown color. So what I'm doing here is I'm adding the orange and blue to get a different shade of brown. And you don't necessarily have to do this. It's just something I like to do when you're mixing colors and to get like a different contrasting color of what you're working with. You can use more paint from a different tube, but I already had blue and orange on my palette, so I just wanted to go ahead and use what I had. So now that the pumpkin's a little dry, I'm going to go back over with vermilion to add a little bit more of a shading here. I'm going to fix my mistakes. And I'm also going to add a little bit more depth to the crease of the pumpkin on some of the sections here. And we're going to let that be. Okay, now we are going to let our pumpkin dry, and we're going to move over to a new page so we can paint our florals. So these are the type of florals that we're doing. They're kind of like a folk art floral. They're pretty trendy right now, and I think they would be very cute with some fall colors on top of our pumpkin. So let's get started with that. So these florals are actually really easy to make. I'm just going to show you on a smaller sheet of paper right now, but you do want to make at least 5 or 6 of these big flowers and a couple of small flowers. So you can use any color that you want. I originally used this rose color and some yellow and purple, but again, use any color that you want for this project. So for this type of floral, you really don't want your paint to be too thin. So just add a little bit of water, and I mean like just dip your brush in water and use that to blend with your pigment. So we're going to make a very imperfect circle here, and you can make it a little wavy on the edges, and what these waves will end up being are your little petals. So you can leave it oblong like this, or if you want, you can go back in and make it a little bit more round. That is totally up to you, especially for your own preferences. But for this floral, for me, I like it to be a little wavy. And it really helps to have your brush strokes go all the way through for each petal, so you can kind of reference those brush strokes for your detail lines. But it's not necessary. You can have it completely opaque and just kind of fill in the lines as you see fit. So we're going to let this flower dry. Go ahead and make multiple flowers in this color, and even make the same type of flower in different colors too. Once those are all dry, we can go back in and add all of the details. So I'm going to use burnt umber for the center of the flower. And what you are doing is you're literally making a dot in the middle of the flower. You can make that center as big as you want, or you can make it small. For this type of floral, I think that they look cute when the center of the flower is a little bit bigger. So when you do your lines, you want to do a contrasting color, but not the exact opposite. I mean, you can. You just want to pick a different color that kind of stands off of the color of the flower itself. So I think I might actually go with this orange. Okay, so for our lines for the flower here, we're going to use a small brush, and you really want this paint to be thick, so use very little water and mix it with your paint. And the reason is you don't want it to be opaque, you don't want to see through it. So we're going to find the brush strokes here, and we're just going to paint little swoops of lines in our petals here and just go all around the flower. It's okay to overlap some, but you don't really want them to touch. And we're going to do a second layer closer to the middle of the flower. So now I'm going to show you how to make a leaf, and I'm just getting some of this green here, and I'm going to test the color on this page. And it's really bright, and honestly it's a beautiful color, but I kind of want to dull it down a little bit to let the flower stand out, especially since it's fall. So I'm going to test what these other colors do with this green. So to kind of make a more dull green, you want to add the opposite color of green, which is kind of a red color. And I don't necessarily have red on my palette here, but I do have pink. So I'm going to blend pink in with it, and it kind of made it a little bit of like a brownish purple. And so I'm going to go back in and add a little bit more yellow just to offset that purple, because the opposite color of purple is yellow, and that will make it a little bit more brown. So we're going back to this beautiful greenish brown color. If you can't do a leaf with 2 strokes, you can outline the leaf itself and then just go back and fill it in. But to do a 2-stroke leaf, what you'll do is you'll just put your brush down at about a 45-degree angle, and then we're going to drag the brush down, and as we're dragging, we're going to push down on the brush. So you kind of have like a little bit of pressure, push down and pick it back up slowly. So you're still dragging the brush when you pick it up. And see, I didn't pick it up as slow as I could, so now there's a little bit of a jagged edge. I'm just going to go back in and fill that in with my brush. And there's our first flower. So now we're going to move on, and we're going to paint this flower next. So it's kind of like a heart shape with a 3rd petal in the middle of the heart. So we're going to make a teardrop shape right here. And it's easier for me to do the outside petals first and then come back in and do the middle petal. And that way you can kind of go ahead and gauge the size of your flower. So we're going to do another teardrop shape on the opposite side. So now we've made the size of the flower. So now we're just going to add one more petal in the middle here. It's always easier to make things symmetrical when you have 2 sides and then fill it in the middle versus having to add one onto the side. So I'm just going to smooth out my paint here because my paint is really watered down. It's not necessarily a bad thing, but it's not ideal for this type of style. So again, if this is how your flower looks, you can go back in and add another layer of paint on it after it dries, or just don't water your paint down as much. So we're going to let this flower dry and we will come back to it and add the lines. Okay, so we're going to get some paint on our brush here, and this is a little too much, so I'm going to swipe some off. You really want it to be smooth so you can get smooth lines. So we're going to start not exactly at the bottom, but a little bit up from the bottom of the flower and just make a few lines. I'm going to do 3 here. You can do 4 to switch up your flowers and make them look a little bit different from each other. And then we're going to go back in and make little dots. So there's like a glob of paint on the tip of your brush. You don't want that. So go ahead and wipe that off, and we're going to come back and make little dots on the tips of our lines here. And then after it dries, if you need to come back and correct some of the lines, you can use the same color as the actual flower and just kind of cover up some of those lines if they get out of line. Alright, so now we're going to make the leaf. I'm going to mix it with a little bit of this brown that I made earlier. And it's going to give us this really nice, pretty dark green. It really doesn't matter how many leaves you make here. It is cute to have leaves with your pumpkin, but it is not necessary. So make as many as you want. It's always nice to have extra when you cut them out and are arranging your florals. So don't forget to make extras of everything if you're unsure of what flowers you're going to use. Okay, now I'm going to show you how to make the smaller flower. This is the smallest flower of the group, and we did 3 different sizes of flowers just to give us a variety. You always want some type of variety in your artwork. So what I'm doing here is I'm just making ovals and overlapping these long ovals on top of each other in kind of like a star pattern. So I did 3 ovals to make 6 petals. If it's hard for you to do the 3 oval method, what you can do is you can do a circle and then just add your petals onto it after that. Also, don't forget to add a dot to the center of your small flower. Orange or yellow would look nice with this purple flower. So I've already painted some of my florals, and I'm going to cut these out. Alright, now that you have all of your flowers cut out, go ahead and have fun and arrange these on top of your pumpkin. Don't forget to leave a little bit of that stem showing through because it really kind of pulls the piece together. So I'm going to show you what the end of the pumpkin looks like for my project, and here it is. You can also add a little saying at the top or bottom of this piece to finish it off, and maybe do something cute like happy fall or give thanks or something festive like that. Either way, I hope you guys really enjoyed this project. Thank you for watching with me, and thank you for painting with me, and I hope you guys have a blessed day.